Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Vulkan, and yesterday we did a quick preview of Frigg along with some of my early impressions. Now today we're going to do a deep dive into the character. We're going to talk about her attacks, her weapon, all the advancement perks she gets, as well as matrices and her awakening traits. So if you're wanting to know if Frigg is worth chasing after when she's added to the game September 1st, this video should have literally everything you need to know outside of actually playing the character yourself. So let's break down what Frigg brings to the table, and let's start off with her attacks. So one, we have our normal attack. Now this is going to be just like every other weapon, right? You can chain 5 attacks in a row, and as you chain those together, they're going to go up and down in terms of damage. Then we have our aerial discharge attack, which again, while you're airborne, you can click attack multiple times, and you're going to chain together an attack that gains more and more damage. Now, in terms of her personal ones, we have Soaring Slash and Helix Slash. So Soaring Slash, while you're normal attacking, you can hold normal attack to trigger Soaring Slash. You're gonna lunge forward with a horizontal swipe, then launch the targets into the air. In terms of your Helix Slash, we're gonna tap and hold normal attack while airborne, and we're going to basically do a whirlwind to the ground. While you're whirlwinding, every hit is going to do a little bit of damage, but then when you get to the ground, you'll do a kind of a big slam, and then it'll give you a nice chunk of damage on whatever targets happen to be there. So let's take a look at how these actually look when we're playing the character. So we're normal attacking, and then we hold, and that's sort of our soaring lunge there. So you can see she kind of just kicks everything up in the air. And then while we're in the air, you can tap and hold, and this is where that corkscrew or that whirlwind actually comes into play. So we can see how that performs. So those are the normal attacks. So let's go to the dodges. So she has a regular dodge, but then she has a multi-slash dodge. Long story short, this is essentially a cleaving dodge. So if you want to see how this looks, you can dodge and tap, and that's going to create this multi-slash. Essentially, it just cleaves everything in front of her. After that, we have our skill. So our skill is called Fimbulwinter. Now, this skill is very important to Frigg. So the way she operates is she has a bunch of compounding benefits that'll take place as long as you use Fimbulwinter often. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. So let's break down what this skill actually does. So one, it's going to deal a large amount of damage. And then during this skill, you're going to suspend and launch your targets. You're going to get damage immunity, and there's a 30-second cooldown, which is nice because other skills are 60 seconds. So having this at 30 makes a lot of sense, especially as we dive deeper and kind of dissect all the things we get from Fimbulwinter. So after you unleash the skill, a large frost domain will be formed around you for 25 seconds. This is important. Now, the number of dodges you can perform will not be deducted when you perform the dodge within the frost domain. So basically, you get unlimited dodges as long as you're in this frost domain they're referencing. And then again, while you're in the frost domain, you get a buff called Domain of Frost. And this is going to increase your shatter by 25% when using a frost weapon. So if you're someone that, like Meryl, that has a lot of shatter, it's only going to give you even more shatter. But if you're somebody like Balmung over here, right, your shatter is a little bit low. So this might push you up into an S tier shatter. So that way you can actually break shields more quickly. So you can take a weapon that's not great at shatter and make it good at shatter, or you can take a weapon that's amazing at shatter and make it even better at shattering. So there's a lot you can do with that. But let's take a look at how this skill actually performs. So let's go over here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just press number 1. This is the skill. So you can see a bunch of slashes. She does this big pounding thing. And then we have this AoE on the ground. This is your frost domain. So if you look at my dodge meter, as I'm sitting here dodging around, it gets refilled immediately. So you can just continuously dodge over and over and over again. And as long as this thing is up, which is 25 seconds, then you're not gonna have any problems. So now that we know the skill, let's talk about the discharge. So in terms of your discharge, you have Frigid Fracture. So truly, this is sort of like how the other ones operate. So when the weapon charge is full or Fantasia is triggered, you're going to clear all your debuffs, and then you're going to dash forward upon switching to this weapon. You're going to temporarily control opponents in an area before unleashing a gigantic slash. But basically how this operates is you switch to it, she's going to send out this sort of like ice column, this ice lane in front of her. It's going to hit things and then freeze them. And then as they're frozen, she's going to do this big slash, and it's going to deal a lot of damage. So it's a pretty cool discharge skill and something that I think a lot of people will really like. So those are the normal attacks, dodges, skills, and discharge attacks. Let's talk about the weapon itself. So you can see here the Shatter and Charge, they're both A tier. They're not anything to write home about. But again, as long as you're in that Frost domain and you get that extra Shatter, this could go up. So that's just kind of a taste at how much Domain of Frost will improve the way Frigg's weapon works. So because we are an Ice DPS type, we do have the Ice Shell buff down here, where you're going to freeze the target for 2 seconds and leave it frostbitten. If you break that ice shell, you're going to have a big chunk of damage that they're going to take. And then while frostbitten, the target's weapon charge rate is reduced by 50%. Now, here's Frost Resonance. I know a lot of people were talking about this, but she does come with Frost Resonance. You're going to be able to increase your Frost attack by 15% and Frost Resistance by 25%. You need to have at least 2 Frost weapons in order to activate this, but this is something that's coming. So if you're somebody who wants to be kind of all about, you know, and have a huge Frost team, then this is sort of the core character that you can build around to do that. So let's talk advancements, because this is where Balmung or Frigg, however you want to call her, really starts to kind of spread her wings. So at 1 star, you're going to gain 1 Frosty point every time you receive 550% times Frost attack of damage in the Frost domain. Up to 10 Frost points can be accumulated. Now when Frost domain ends, these Frost points times Frost attack times 95% will deal blast damage to all enemies in your Frost domain. However, if you leave the Frost domain, you're going to lose Frostiness points every 3 seconds. Now, I don't have any stars to test this out, but to me, it sort of seems like this might be a typo, because you're going to gain 1 point every time you receive damage. I feel like dishing out the damage might make a lot more sense, but maybe it truly is. You're receiving damage, you're getting hurt, so you're building up that frostiness. I'm not entirely sure. So this is a big point of contention for me, and I wish I had a star. That way I could test this out for you guys. But just know for now, it does say receive damage. But this kind of just soups up everything you're going to be able to do in the Frost domain. You're going to gain that 1 frostiness point, and then once you hit 10, you're going to have a ton of extra damage that's going to kick out once Frost domain ends. So your whole point is to try to get up to 10. That way, once the big AoE disappears, you're able to do a huge amount of damage. So at 2 stars, our weapon HP goes up. But at 3 stars, we're going to increase our Frosty limit to 15. So we're going from 10 to 15. And then when you use your discharge skill for any Frost weapon, while you're in the Frost domain, you're going to deal damage equal to 20% of your Frost attack times the current frostiness that you have plus 5. So if you're capped at 15 and you switch over to Meryl to use Meryl's skill, then you're going to, 1, deal damage with Meryl, but then you're also going to deal an additional 20% damage, 20% of your Frost attack damage times 20. Because if we're at 15, it adds an extra 5. So it just is a huge amount of damage that's going out in terms of AoE. Beneath that, we have our 4 star. So this is going to increase our attack. And then we have 5 stars. So this is another way that we're just kind of building benefits on top of the Frost domain. So if you shatter a shield using a Frost weapon while you're in the Frost domain, you're going to freeze the target for 2 seconds, and you're going to cause the frostiness points times Frost attack times 35% of additional damage to the target. Now, if the target can't be frozen, then you're going to double that additional damage dealt. So again, this just kind of creates this really interesting dynamic where Frigg is able to deal incredible single target damage and then also incredible AoE damage. So not only when the Frost domain ends are you doing this kind of big bang to literally nuke everything that's in there, but you're also increasing the damage you're going to deal to enemies that have shields. So shattering those is going to be super important because you're going to be able to deal a lot of extra damage. And then for our 6 stars, so when the Frosty points reach 15 and you're within the Frost domain, you get an additional Domain of Frost buff. So it doesn't say replace, it doesn't say swap out, it says additional. So in addition to, and it's going to increase your Frost attack by 20% when using Frost weapons. So guys, this is just, to me, it's kind of crazy because you have so many extra benefits that are supporting and propping up Frost weapons with Frigg. So not only do you have Tsubasa that's going to pump out a ton of damage buffs for your party, but now you have Frigg that's going to deal an incredible amount of damage, grant extra shatter, grant an additional kind of pulse damage whenever you shatter shields, and then on top of that, you're going to deal a ton of damage when Frost Domain ends. So just throughout the entire process, as long as Frost Domain is up, you're going to deal damage. Once it ends, you're going to deal a bunch of damage. So if you're looking at a Frost-based team, then this is a fantastic place to start. So flipping over to Frigg's Matrices, here is what we are looking at. So Iron, Mind, and Body. So the 2-piece set is going to increase our Frost attack by up to 15% for 10 seconds when switching between Frost weapons. So again, great. Not only are you dealing additional damage when you activate your discharge skill because of Balmung, but now you're increasing your Frost attack when you switch weapons. So again, it's just those compounding benefits that really start to add up that makes this a really powerful setup. And then on top of that, or for our 4-piece set, whenever you unleash a Frost Domain with the weapon Balmung, enemies within the Frost Domain will receive Frost damage equal to up to 85% of attack every second. Essentially, this creates a blizzard in that Frost Domain, where they're going to take 55 base to 85% of attack every second, which is just going to be crazy. So again, it continues to add on to what the Frost Domain does. So that's why in the beginning of the video, when I talked about Frigg, I said, you know, her skill Thimblewinter having a 30-second cooldown, and then the actual Frost Domain lasting for 25 seconds. So there's only a 5-second offset between those two things. You're going to be able to and need to have Frost Domain up to really see all of the benefits that Frigg can bring. Because if you don't, then you're going to be missing out on tons of damage and tons of utility and extra benefits. So making sure you almost use that skill on cooldown is going to be really important. So those are all of the matrices. Those are the skills. That's the Balmung weapon. The last thing I want to talk about is the actual awakening itself. So for Frigg, her awakening trait at 1200 points is Freeze. This is going to increase your Frost attack by 1.5 points every 3 seconds upon entering battle, and it's going to stack up to 10 times. And then once that battle's over, it's going to last for 5 seconds. So you're going to have this continuous Frost attack that's going to tick up and up and up the longer you're in battle. And then once battle's over, it will disappear, but this is just another big DPS increase. And then at the bottom, we have Icebound, which again, your Frost attack is boosted by 2.4% every 3 seconds. It's going to stack up to 10 times, and that's in addition to Freeze. So you're going to have both of these things going at the same time. Now, in addition, you're also going to gain Hyper Body and become immune to control effects while you're in the Frost Domain. So truly what this looks like, to me, if you're a PvP person, if you go up against Frigg, you need to push her out of her octagon, right? She's going to set up that Frost Domain, and that's going to be her area where she's going to operate because she gets the most buffs and she's damn near unstoppable, it sounds like, especially if somebody is fully invested in her. But if you can push her out of her Frost Domain, then she's going to start to lose a lot of those buffs, right? Her frostiness points are going to disappear. She's not going to get this Hyper Body buff. She's not going to get a lot of the extra shatter and things like that that come with being in that Frost Domain. So from a PvP standpoint, push her out and keep her out if you want to have a chance. From a PvP perspective, or PvE perspective rather, pairing her up with Meryl and with Tsubasa seems to make the most sense. I mean, Tsubasa is going to give you big damage boosts on top of everything you get from the Frost Domain, and then Frigg is going to be able to deal tons and tons and tons of damage. And then if you happen to come up against a shield, you can flip over to Meryl and just pulverize anything in front of you because, again, switching to a Frost weapon is going to give you extra shatter, and it's going to give you a bunch of extra stuff. That way you can melt through those shields super quick and then flip back over to Frigg in order to deal even more damage. So guys, I hope you liked this deep dive into Frigg and everything she brings. We talked about attacks, we talked about her weapon, her matrices, and her awakening. So anyway, if you guys like Tower of Fantasy content and want to see more of this type of stuff in the future, please consider subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.